you go. Welcome once again. Every Wednesday night in Malaysia, it's 9 p.m. exactly, and we are welcoming you to another episode of Stay Kind. This is called the leadership episode because we do have a leadership expert with us tonight. Fantastic gentleman all the way from the south of France. And we will have a great chat with him. But I do have several co-hosts tonight. It's nice to have friends on board with you. So first and foremost, we do have Nurul Fatia. How are you, Nurul?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Azif.
Excellent. I am still trying to schedule a Miro session with you. It's such a lovely tool, and I'd really love to learn more about it.
Anytime.
So are you concentrating on that now with your business?
I am concentrating on that now, but I'm also I am also looking into diversification next year. But you will know more about it because there will be, of course, an announcement. Nothing.
Excellent. We'd like to hear about it on this show as well. Next, we have Carl Chung, our feng shui master.
Hello.
Sifu Carl. So, how's it going, Carl?
Things have been good. The country is opening up. Things are moving. I think everybody is starting to be able to cari makan a bit, and of course, my clients are also looking to further guidance on the coming 2022.
Excellent.
And yes, excellent.
So it must be a busy time for you then.
Yes. For feng shui consultants, the busiest is always December and January.
End of the year, yeah.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So, and we also have another co-host, Michael.
Hi,
Teo.
everyone. Hello, Asif. Hello, Carl. Hello,
Hello.
Good to see. It's like a reunion. Yes, the Stay Kind team.
Yay.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Fantastic. How's it been going, Mike?
Things have been amazing. We are wrapping up the year with a few more client engagements. Hope to have more. But I think a lot of companies are now prepping their employees, winding them down a little bit, and then starting them strong in the year 2022 as we expect the economy to gradually recover. People are going out, and it's just amazing to see the cheerful faces on the streets again, even though with the mask on, but you do know when they're smiling because their eyes become extra small. So having said that though, things have been amazing. I love what I do, inspiring, motivating people. Great to be reunited with two of our friends right here, Carl and Nurul again. And Azif, let's make an awesome show again today with our special guests.
Before I forget, 10 days to Christmas. So Merry Christmas to all people celebrating. 10 days to go. Have you bought your gifts yet? We'll probably have another show before then, but we had something in the office today, so I was wearing green and red and a Santa hat. That was a lot of fun. But again, to everybody celebrating, have a great time. We are, as you say, Michael, winding down, but it is a time for reflection. It's a time to see how 2021 has been for us personally and professionally, and to plan for 2022. Now, with that, we have an expert on our hands as our guest tonight. We do have Jim Hick. Hello, Jim. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Hello. It's amazing to see such enthusiasm and love and laughter coming from that far part of the world.
Nice to have you on board. Tell us, where are you currently located, Jim?
I'm in the southwest of France, quite near the Bordeaux wine growing area. And I do drink a bit of wine, not a huge amount, but it is a wonderful, quiet part of France. The wonderful thing as well is that there are so many beautiful old properties which are just begging for people to come and look after them and restore them and renovate them. And that's what I've been doing partly over the last 5 years, bringing this old tumble-down house back to life. It's a lovely area.
Wow. And you're originally from across the channel?
I am, yes. Originally from England, born quite near London. And I can tell you my long life story if you like at some point. But suffice to say that I've lived quite a long time out of the UK, including Singapore and Hong Kong, both wonderful places. And I do miss working in that part of the world. But with virtual working, we can still connect with
of course.
people right around the world. Fantastic.
Exactly. Just like we are doing right now, from Malaysia to all the way to southwest of France, and live to all of you who are tuning in right now. So to all of our audience members, we have quite a few members right now. Please do say hello and tell us where you are tuning in from. That's always gives us a great kick to know where our audience is coming from. So in this first part of our show, Jim, we just want to know a little bit more about you and your background and where you came from and how you ended up with TTIP Consulting as the global leadership development head. So maybe for the first question, we go to Nurul.
So the first question comes to me. Okay. Shall we go into the tough stuff first or the easy stuff first? No.
Maybe background first, just
Yeah. Okay.
James, where he came
Okay,
from.
so let's warm up, right? So yeah, James, share with us more about yourself, and I'm curious to know, like, why do you want to focus on leadership specifically?
Yeah. Can I first of all say, as he introduced me as an expert on leadership, and sometimes I feel, well, I actually know very little about leadership, and I'm always learning and being surprised by the things that I discover when I see leadership in action. So I consider myself more of a learner rather than an expert. But having said that, I have been involved in leadership development for a long time. And it started, I think, back in Papua New Guinea. So as a young man, well before my hair got grey, I worked as a volunteer in Papua New Guinea in an agricultural capacity. So my role was to help young men and women become effective extension officers working in the very, very remote parts of Papua New Guinea in agriculture, nutrition, and anything related to the people in the rural areas. And that required quite a bit of not just management, but leadership as well, to help inspire and engage people around what they were doing. Some of the individuals I was working with were from totally different parts of the country compared to the parts that they would work in. So they would be going to remote places where the people spoke different languages, and they needed the confidence and the inspiration. And I think I discovered there how important it was to motivate and inspire people. And I think I learned a few tricks of how to do that. So that was probably the start. But I also had I consider a very interesting childhood. Would you like to hear a little bit about that? Yes.
I love stories. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I was born in what is considered to be quite a big family, in an English family. My parents were Roman Catholics, and Roman Catholics are, at least used to be, notorious for having lots of children, for the obvious reason. And I had 6 siblings, 4 sisters and 2 brothers. So we had a lovely childhood, and my brothers and sisters I'm still very close to. But one really interesting thing was also my dad was an entrepreneur. He actually wasn't a brilliant businessman, but he had lots of good ideas. And one idea he had back when I was a little boy was to start a zoo. So he with one of his relatives, bought a plot of land, 2 big farms in the north of England, and established a zoo. So at the age of 6, myself and my siblings moved to the zoo and had a wonderful time with animals coming in: elephants, tigers, giraffes, penguins, polar bears. So we all had jobs to do. And one of my favorite jobs was I had to get up early in the morning, go and find a big bale armful of hay, and go and feed the baby elephant. We had a baby elephant that was orphaned, and I used to have to feed it. And they're very intelligent creatures, as you know. They're very sensitive, wonderful creatures. And every morning I went to feed him. He put his little trunk around my neck and gave me a hug And we became very close. And it was a wonderful relationship with an animal. But we also had so many other animals. And another weird animal was a bull that was a dwarf. He was actually an Angus bull, Aberdeen Angus bull, black, but instead of being about 1.5 meters at the shoulder, he was only about 45 centimeters. So he was a little tiny dwarf bull, but he had all the instincts of a full-grown bull and used to come charging at me and try to knock me over when I came to feed him. But we had a wonderful time. But that experience made me realize that in a way we can create our own experiences. If we feel we need adventure and excitement, we can do that. So I've always been a little bit spontaneous and keen to experience new places and new people and do different new crazy things. So I have actually established a number of businesses. The first one that I set up was a leadership training business when we came back from Papua New Guinea. And that was based on outdoor activities. So Michael, you'll probably be totally familiar with this style of training, using outdoor activities to help leaders develop. And that was based in the UK and was successful. With my wife, we also established a herb nursery. We grew like 300 varieties of herbs, including rosemary, thyme, different kinds of parsley, and so on, and shipped them around the country as green herbs. And you know, one thing about herbs is that they're almost worth their weight in gold. So a 50-gram bag of rosemary is I don't know, it's maybe worth in the UK maybe $30, £30 or whatever. So it's a wonderful product for distributing. It's very light and cheap to establish. So we did that for 10 years. I've also established a brewery for drinking beer. I don't know if anyone drinks beer, but we established that about 18 years ago. And my son and his wife, who he's married now, are running the brewery now, very successful, again, in the UK. So those are a few businesses that I've run that I guess have required a bit of leadership. And I've been lucky enough to be associated with one or two companies who are world leaders in leadership, one of which is Impact International, and they're based in the UK. Now, I spent some time in Singapore and in Hong Kong establishing leadership development and training business in those countries for them. So Impact have a fantastic leadership proposition. Again, I can share with you that it's very close to my own as well, and the basis on which I help people develop as leaders. So that's a bit of a run through. There might be some questions. What more would you like to know?
Well,
Yeah,
that has
thanks.
been amazing so far, hasn't it, Nurul? So we got a great glimpse of where you came from and the amazing childhood you've had living in a zoo. I mean, that is like the stuff of books and of tales of growing up with all of these animals. That's fantastic. So I would just like to quickly remind our audience that they can at any time ask questions in the chat. We'd be happy to flash your question up and get Jim to answer it, or any one of us. Please, we really would like to engage you and be part of this conversation that we're having. So thanks so much for that question, Nurul. And off to you, Carl.
Yes, Jim. My question to you is, in your many travels to the different countries and the focus on leadership, what do you find is the same and what is different in terms of leadership styles pertaining to different countries?
Yes, that's a really, really interesting question. So I need to think about that before I answer off the top of my head. But culturally, it's interesting that we live in a very exciting world full of wonderful cultures. And in my view, there are more similarities between those cultures than there are differences. And it's always a shame, in my view, when people see the differences, and that prevents them from getting to understand and work with people from other cultures. But I believe that leadership is the same, in a sense, in any culture. And some of the greatest leadership thinkers and writers have come from Asia. And it's only relatively recently that leadership has developed in the West as it has. But I find that some of the principles of leadership are the same. One, for example, is that people must be valued, that people are the important part of everything we do. Without people and without engagement, we can't be successful as leaders. And the cultures that I was first, for example, in when I went to China, working in China for a while, people said, "Oh, in China, people don't like to be coached, or people don't like to be asked questions about how do they think they should do things." The coaching style in China is totally different. People want answers. People want to be told what to do. And this was different from my experience in Europe and elsewhere, that coaching for leadership involved a lot of questioning and challenging, not giving answers and telling people what to do or how to do it, but seeking their deeper drivers by questions and helping them find the answers to the way how to do things, how to overcome problems, and so on. So it was very different in China. People were saying to me this, but I discovered that once people got used to a more facilitative style of working, it was actually a much more effective way of getting engagement. So I worked with, for example, a company called Wärtsilä, who are a Scandinavian-based shipbuilding and energy company. And I ran a big program for them of building a culture of coaching, because the managers in the company, the Chinese managers, were used to being very instructive and commanding. And the broader company wanted a more facilitative approach, a more coaching approach. So I worked with dozens of managers to help them understand the coaching approach, and they loved it, and it worked really well. It was a very successful initiative. So I guess to answer Carl's questions, there are more similarities than differences in the way that leadership develops or is exhibited in different cultures. It's probably more I could say.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, and thanks, Carl, for that great question. Next, we have Michael Teo.
Hey, thank you so much, Azib. And hello, Jim. Exactly. I believe we're quite alike. I, too, motivate, inspire, equip people with a lot of knowledge, insights, and experiences through experiential learning, whether it be simulations that are down in the outdoors, or right now we're using VR headsets, bringing people into the metaverse. So things are looking up to be very exciting. Having said that, Jim, I've just mentioned a few technological advancement. We talk about VR, virtual reality. We talk about the metaverse, which has been advocated by Mark Zuckerberg right now. And I know that your company's name, it's something to do with transforming technology into profits. Now, my question is for you, Jim. How do you help leaders in organization transform technology into profits? Bearing in mind that in most organizations, sometimes people see adopting a new technology as a cost. People see adopting a new technology as a risk for the company. So my question is, from your wealth of experience, how did you crack that hard egg? How did you manage to persuade the leaders to put the bet, to take the risk, adopt new technology, change the culture, the way they work, and then reap benefit from it? Any thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, well, it's good, Michael, and a really good question. And what I'd like to do is just clarify what we try to do. The transforming technology into profit is not so much about helping people with technology, for example, virtual learning or whatever. It's more helping them with the technology, the ideas that they have, and helping them commercialize it.
Right.
So, for example, we have an organization who is comprises of inventors who are working with graphene.
Right.
Are you aware of graphene?
Yeah, nanotechnology.
I'm not a technologist myself, but graphene is an allotrope of carbon, and it has some amazing properties. It's a relatively new developed material from carbon. One feature of it is that it can be made incredibly thin, just a few microns thin. It's incredibly strong, like spiders' webs, and also it's the best conductor of electricity known to man.
Right.
So it's got potentially huge applications, but we don't know what they are yet. So we're working with people in an organization. Yes, there's a question there. Graphene, carbon nanotech, right? Yes, that's it. And we're helping them work through the process of getting funding and investment. For example, in order for them they need that money before it commercializes to develop, to do all the research and the trials and the pilots and the testing in order for it to become a commercial reality. So we're working with them in that sense. We're also helping organizations set up factories and operations in other parts of the world that where, for example, their market is. So we're working with one technology company in the UK who wants to establish in Japan.
Right.
So we, not necessarily myself, but some of my colleagues have very specialist knowledge and ability and connections in Japan. So they will work with them closely to do that. So that just so the clarity I hope I've made is that we help people develop their technology rather than using the technology, Michael, which I think you were getting at.
Excellent. So, Jim, this leads me to a question, just to clarify. So, what type of technology, what are some of the criteria that you would normally use to evaluate if you would want to help that technology to commercialize it further or to develop it further? What are some of your criteria, if you could share with us?
Yeah. Well, we have to be convinced that it's going to work.
Right.
As I said, I'm not a technologist. I'm more of a people person, and we would, for example, always start with a good business plan. And those of us who have business plans know that a good business plan is so hard to do, but it's so important. When, for example, we established the brewery, my son and I spent, I think it was probably 6 months, and he did most of the work. 6 months putting a business plan together, and it seems so slow. And it only took another 6 months to actually build the factory and get the production going. But if we hadn't done that business plan, the business would not have succeeded. So we rely on a good business plan, which is, as far as it can be, it's evidence that the business can work. And if an organization is developing a product or a process, we have to have evidence that proves it's a runner. So, for example, organizations like Cornell will do testing and pilots to determine the integrity of the potential product and so on. So we have to be convinced. There's huge pressure because people pay us to help them commercialize. So it's very tempting to say, oh yeah, let's grab their money and then worry about it later. But I'm always very concerned that if we took that approach and then we discovered that it wasn't a runner, we'd feel very guilty that we'd taken the money and that the idea wasn't commercialable in the future. So again, does that make sense?
Thank you. It does. Thank you. Back to you, Azim.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michael. In Malaysia, we do actually have a graphene master plan, and there is an agency called Nano Malaysia that is leading the charge in that, headed by a wonderful Dr. Rizal Ahmad, who really is taking charge and trying to lead the nation into this new technology, which is quite an amazing thing. So, Jim, there's a question here from let's see. Let's put it on the screen. Yeah, it's from Shafri Shafi is asking, why does leadership fail in certain organizations and not others? What are your thoughts on this?
Yep, Shafri, that's a really interesting question. And there's another question lower down, isn't there, from Firdaus, about how do you develop a culture of innovation? So if we take the question about why leadership fails in certain organizations, I've seen successes and failures. And for me, the most common cause of failure is when leaders become too self-centered and they fail to see the wider picture of the importance of people. The successful leaders I've seen have been those who have valued people. And I don't particularly want to mention a name, but one organization that I did refer to before, Impact International, it's led by a gentleman called David Williams, who was the founder almost 35 years ago. And his total drive is that people are important, that people are the basis of the organization, trust them, support them. If they fail, don't give up on them. Keep supporting through different failures, believe in people. And for me, he's an inspiration because he's demonstrated that believing in people through thick and thin, not giving up on them, even when they fail, is my view. That's such an important thing. On the converse is that leaders I've seen a lot of businesses fail, not necessarily purely because of the leader, but generally speaking, it is ultimately the leader's responsibility to help the business succeed. And not just businesses, but organizations as well. I attended a college of London University that was had a hugely successful history in agriculture and horticulture, developing young men and women who worked around the world in all sorts of capacities as very professional agriculturalists and horticulturalists. After I left, a few years after I left, the college collapsed. It totally failed. And it was, in my view, it was a leadership issue. There was a lack of vision. There was a lack of sense of what actually are we really here for, and a lack of understanding of the business environment that colleges were then in. They were becoming more and more dependent on understanding how they ran as a business, and the leadership totally failed to do that, and the whole business collapsed.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's
I think it's a failure to believe in people, combined with the failure, I guess, to establish a clear vision of what the business is about, and inspiring people with that vision.
No,
So,
once you've said that, how to inspire people with that vision. Down back to Firdaus's question: how do you help leaders develop a culture of innovation? Then,
yes, we actually ran a seminar. We Transforming Technology into Profit. Our company runs a monthly seminar, networking event for business leaders around the world, And we ran a session on how do you actually, exactly this question, how do you build a culture of leadership? And of course, it does start with the leader, and it begins with the leader's ability to develop others. So if a leader is able to inspire the immediate level down below him with the mission and the ethos that he or she wants to establish, then he or she will be successful. So establishing that culture has to come from the top. And it starts with example. So an effective leader will set a good example. And can I give you a sort of an example of the converse of this? I was running a program in Hong Kong for one of the big banks. I won't say who it is. And it was some senior managers, and it was all about working together as an effective team of senior managers. And we had a great time. We had a really successful event. And at the end of it, the head of the region, really important guy, came into the meeting and said, "Guys, I love you all." And he walked around and shook hands with everyone, knew each of their names. And I thought, wow, this is great. He knows their names, he connects, he values. This is a really, really good example. And it was that sort of ability to connect and at an individual level with people and to demonstrate that he really valued it. But I've also seen the converse of that, where I again ran a program and a senior manager came in at the end and he said, "Okay, you guys, each one of you has a responsibility to achieve such and such and such and such. You all know what you have to achieve. If you don't achieve this by the end of the year, you're out. One strike and you're out." And it immediately sent a message to me that this guy really didn't value those people. He was leading by fear, and that I think it will lead to failure.
Yeah, it is amazing that in today's day and age, people still do that, and we can still find individuals and leaders who feel that they can, scare people into performing, which is just so counterintuitive. But anyway, thanks for sharing those cool stories, Jim. And we have a much better understanding of where you're coming from and the type of leadership development that you do. So let's go another full round. We'll go back to Nurul Fatia for her next question.
Okay, so thanks. I love the stories that you just mentioned, because I wanted to ask you. There are people who lead with fear, because I had a string of bosses, with different style, but they're successful, right? They lead with fear, successful. Lead with kindness, successful. But really, I wanna hear a story of how people how do you transform a leader to be a better leader? There are fierce leaders who eventually tone down and be better. There are two kind leaders who maybe not successful in the beginning, but eventually sharpen the skill and become a better leader. And leaders are all about transformation. So before they transform the organization, I would love to hear a story where leaders transform themselves to be a better leader.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to think of a good example. I think that ability to be a learner is really important. I feel that I personally am learning all the time from the experience I have with people. And I'm trying to think of an example of somebody who has demonstrated a transformation. Because one thing about human behavior is it is actually quite difficult to change, isn't it? That we know, for example, that we need to perhaps do things differently, but because it's so ingrained, we're often find it so difficult to actually change our behavior. And it does take a lot of discipline, a lot of courage sometimes to do that. And I think the people who I have seen successful at doing this have been able to, they've had a structure, they've had a process to do it. And one process I find very important is to recognize that leadership, and I'm linking to another question here about leaders, are they born or not, or can they learn to be leaders? That those successful transformations I've seen have been with individuals who've said, look, I need to change, I need a structure in order to do that. And one very simple structure is that leadership is about action. It's not about charisma or something vague. It's about what you actually do. And for me, there's like three main areas of action that a leader can take to be successful. And in a moment, I'll tell you what one or two examples of people who I think have done that. So a good leader will take action to help people understand the meaning of what they're doing. Why the heck are we doing this? Why is it important for me, for the world, for the organization? And a good leader will take action. It might be just sitting down and saying, look, the reason we're doing this, Nurul, is da 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 da. This is the reason. Let's talk about it. Let's examine it. The reason it's going to benefit the world is da 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 da. So that's one area of meaning. How does a leader takes action by helping people understand meaning? The second thing a leader has to actually do in terms of behavior is to help create structure. So structure in an organization is important, whether it's a business or a government or whatever organization. If people aren't clear about what they are meant to do, how they fit into the wider mission, they are confused. And I've found that particularly early on in a career, people often are quite a little bit unsure of how do we actually create structure? What's actually my role? Why am I here? And they might, because they're feeling lacking in confidence, they might hide that under a shell of bravado and false confidence. But people need to know clearly what their role is and how they connect with other people. So that's the second thing. The third thing is about being valued. So a leader takes action on helping people understand why they're doing what they're doing. He or she helps them know where they fit in. And then the third part is the leader helps people realize that they are valued, and that the leader herself or himself demonstrates that in everything they do, not just say it, they do it. So there's three things: meaning, structure, and being valued. Now this is a code or a structure that I actually learned from Impact International, and it's a wonderful structure, and they're wonderful leadership development people. But for me, it's helped really clarify when things go wrong. What is going wrong? Is it because people don't know what they're doing, or they don't know why they're doing it, or that they feel unrecognized and unloved? I've seen people within the organization of Impact who were fairly normal managers beforehand take this on board and use it, and it does work. It does help create direction and motivated people.
Wow, I love the true structures. Thank you for sharing, Jim. It's about meaning. It's about creating meaning. It's about creating structure and also creating values in the organization. Awesome. Thank you so much. Azim?
Yeah.
Thanks, Nurul. Yeah, that was great insight from you, Jim, and really actionable learnings that we can use. Now, off to you, Carl.
Oh, actually, I see a question from the people from Eunice here. Let me read out the question. What advice do you have for young leaders? What do they lack as compared to the older generation?
Wow, what a question. What a great question. Well, as a member of the older generation, I guess I can look back on my career and say, what would I have liked to have known when I was 23, 24, and trying to lead, trying to have an influence on people. And I think one thing is to believe in yourself, to have confidence that you can do anything as well as anyone who's older or more experienced. Again, it is about having a structure or a process. And young leaders can still benefit hugely by understanding that meaning, structure, and value approach. If somebody had told me that when I was 23, I probably would have made far fewer mistakes. And I think the other thing is being very forgiving of yourself, that any experience you have, you might consider, oh, I'm failing, I can't do it, I'm hopeless, da da da. Just take it as a learning experience. Consider that, well, I don't like calling them failures, but consider things that don't feel as if they're working as learning experience is, and always ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What can I take away? Because often I think when things are going badly, we sort of hide under a shell and say, oh, I'm going to go and do something else. This is not for me. I want to do something else. Rather than taking the blinkers off and saying, actually, what's happened? What did I do? What was the result? What can I learn from it? How can I do it differently? So I think being confident that you can learn, you can develop and change and be as effective as anyone who's 100 years older than you. So youth is a wonderful thing, because at that time the brain's working much more quickly than as we get older.
Nice, good question. Thanks, Eunice, and thanks, Carl, for calling out that question. Off to you, Michael Teo.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Azib. Amazing answers, very reflective, got me thinking as well. Just in case if you are noticing, I sometimes do lose eye contact because I make the best out of sessions like these. I've been writing down a lot of notes.
Yeah,
Thank you again. Appreciate it, Jim. Jim, I'm going to take a question from one of our attendees here, Shafi. And Shafi asked, what are the core values that a leader should have to become a role model leader? What are some of the core values that you believe that leaders today, I think I'm going to add on to Shafi's question. What are some of the core values that leaders should have to be role model leaders in the next normal, right after the pandemic, you know? So what are some of the core values that you think they should have right now? Back to you, Jim.
Whoa, again, wonderful, wonderful question. Sparking all sorts of thoughts in my brain.
Nice.
One thing that I have done in the past with groups of leaders, working with groups of leaders, is to ask them what their values are. Right. We have I have an approach which basically reminds them what actually are values. So for example, it might be that Michael, your values are family, wealth, health, fitness. We all have our own sort of values that are important to them. And during this exercise, one thing that I really felt was important was inviting leaders to identify what their own values were and try and prioritize them. So many of them, for example, are things like, my values are family, health, fitness, wealth, career, whatever. And interestingly, we're all different to some extent. There are a few very common ones. Like I think generally family is very high, a very high value for most people. And that the belief in family reflects to me that these people believe in people. That if you love your family and your family is, for example, the most important thing in your life, then you will tend to exhibit those values in your working environment. So that ability to, if you like, share the love, really, I guess staying kind, but if leaders can be effective who have completely different values, perhaps values that we consider to be rather negative, like progression, ambition. Sometimes we see excessively ambitious people, and that might be for them really important, but it might come across as being a little bit pushy, a bit aggressive, and so on. But leaders can be effective with a different range of values. But for me, one of the core ones is the belief in people, and it's not too strong a word, but it sometimes feels a little bit inappropriate, but loving the people in the organization around you. And it's something we don't like to admit sometimes, but I think that for me is important now. It's going to be important in the new normal, if there is going to be a new normal. And I think that trumps all the other values. But one really interesting thing about values is that it's an exercise I think we should all do from time to time, is just to sit down and say, what is really important to me? And to be clear in your own mind and honest with yourself, that there are some things that may be different from your friend or your other managers or whatever. There are values that you have that are really core to you, and you should believe in those and recognize them in yourself. If you are unhappy with any of them, then yes, you can examine them, question them, and talk to other people, get feedback about what they experience from you if you're not happy with what the examination of your values is. So again, it's a slightly roundabout answer to the question.
Oh, good. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, for that wonderful explanation of values. Obviously, each individual has their own values. I personally think that talking about love in a corporate environment should be normalized. I personally have raised that in different organizations and how we should use that as a value. Very difficult to to convince people that it is appropriate, but I think we should discuss that, because as human beings, love for one another is, I believe, critical. So there's other questions as well, but in the middle of the show, Jim, what we didn't do before the show is we have this segment. It's called Would You. Puts our guests in a spot. So we need to choose between two statements. This will help our guests, our of who you are behind this man, behind the global leadership development person that you are. So I will start, and I will then pass to my colleagues on giving you a couple of statements and asking which would you rather. So now that I know that you're in the midst or almost at the tail end of renovating your house or farmhouse, I guess, would you rather have stone floors or hardwood floors? That's your choice.
Well, do I have to choose?
Yes.
Okay. Well, actually, I've got both. The kitchen and the hall area, which are huge areas, are stone tiles, and the bedrooms and the sitting rooms are wood floors. But I think, yes, in the winter, I'd rather have wood floors because they're warmer. In the summer, I'd rather have the stone floors.
To keep it cool, yeah. All right, wonderful.
Yeah.
You have a would you rather, Nurul?
Yeah, these are my. I know in France this is famous because I watch the World Cup when it comes to this sport. So, would you rather play rugby or play football?
Well, I'm a bit old now. My doctor, I was playing until I was about 55, and the doctor said, "Stop playing. You'll kill your knees. Your knees will stop working if you keep playing." But I did play rugby as well many years ago at school. I loved rugby, and I loved soccer as football as well. But I think, yes, I'd rather be playing football, soccer.
Nice. Thanks, Cyril.
I've got an interesting
Carl,
question.
you have
Yes. Would you rather have a farm or have a zoo?
A zoo, a zoo, because of the amazing diversity of animals. Again, a farm is interesting, but a zoo, it was just so amazing to have all those. We had apes and polar bears and everything, giraffes, wolves, lions, tigers.
wow.
And it's just so interesting.
Does that zoo still exist?
Well, you must
Yes,
come
it
to
does. In a reduced way. What actually happened was my father was much more interested in conservation of animals, so he created these huge, great enclosures. And one animal called Ankoli cattle, who are from Africa, they had about 20 hectares to run around in. And when people came to the zoo, they say, "Where are the cattle?" And my dad would say, "Well, they're over there in the trees." And they said, "Well, we can't see them." And my dad was in partnership with his cousin, who was far more business minded. So he made all the cages much smaller. So these poor cattle only had maybe half a hectare to run around in, and they had no natural grass. It was just hay, but people could see them. So my dad was a bit disillusioned with the commercial approach, and eventually we, as a family, we moved out, and the business became more and more commercial. Now it's a theme park with just a few animals in the corner. So that's where the money is. But my dad was true to his values, which were conservation and breeding of animals rather than making money.
Wow.
So
You should come to Malaysia, Jim, and we will show you the immense diversity of animals. We do have a elephant conservation or rehabilitation center called Kuala Ganda. In my family and I've been many times, and I guess you're used to this, eating the baby elephants and all that, but we do get an opportunity to do that and even have a shower with them or bathe with them in the river. So it's quite an amazing
Lovely.
experience.
Yeah.
So off to you, Michael.
Yes.
Wonderful.
I've got a very fun question for
Thank
Jim, or I personally think it's very fun. Here we go. Jim, imagine this, all right? You could turn back the clock and you're living in an alternate universe where you get to choose. Would you rather be Captain America or would you rather be Spider-Man? You can only choose one. Who would it be and why?
Right. Well, I think I'm more familiar with Spider-Man's special abilities. So I always loved the idea that he could fly around and with webs sort of just zoom around. So I think I'd rather be Spider-Man. And just an interesting story. When I lived in Hong Kong, I lived on the island of Lantau.
Yes.
In a village called Mui Wo. Has anybody been to Hong Kong, to Mui Wo? It's a little village on the side of Lantau, and you wouldn't know you're in Hong Kong at all. It's basically a Chinese village, and it was so quirky, such an amazing place. There was a herd of wild buffalo that were descended from the buffaloes that the farmers used to have for the rice paddies. And instead of killing them or getting rid of them, they just let them loose into the forest, which is behind Mui Wo. And the buffaloes just wander around, and most people love them. Some people don't like the mess that they leave behind, but they just walk around in a friendly way. But linking to Spider-Man, there was a guy who would dress up in a Spider-Man costume and drive around on a mountain bike with a boombox playing loud music around the village. And I thought that was just great. That was a special quality I would like to have. So I think Spider-Man.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Now we know how
Wonderful.
Jim
So that's our round. Yeah, that's Jim Spider-Man. So that's our round of Would You Rather. And believe it or not, we are almost at the hour. We have spent a wonderful 55 minutes now speaking with Jim Hick, all the way from the southwest of France. There are a couple of questions that have remained unanswered. What I would encourage you to do, Jim and Michael and Carl and Nurul, is to go back to the comment section in this post and kind of address those questions with them. And that would also help others who come later and watch the reruns to have a bit of context and see the answers to the questions. So thanks to Rizal as well as Shafri for the wonderful questions. We can't take them live right now, but we will do our best to address them in the comment section. So stay tuned. So with that, Jim, I would like to wrap up. And in your mind, what were the key takeaways and what have you learned from this conversation that we had, and what pieces of wisdom can you leave behind to our audience?
Well, what I've learned is that it's still really important to ask myself questions about who I am and what my values are. So I'll go away this afternoon and think about that, and I'm sure it will give me answers to some of the difficulties and issues that are always with us. So that was a really good takeaway. It's helped me think about values again, but also it's reminded me of the amazing energy that's in not just Asia but the world, and the way people are so interested in this amazing topic, and that leadership can be seen as quite an abstract concept. And it's reminded me again, talking to you wonderful guys and answering the questions, that it's actually a real action. It's a real thing that you can actually do something about, whether or not you're naturally a brilliant leader or not. So you don't have to be born. So thank you for reminding me of some of those things.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jim, all the way from where you are. And to all of our audience members, thank you so much for dropping by and sharing with us this full conversation we've had. You've enriched our lives, Jim, by just sharing a piece of you with all of us. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please help thank Jim Hick as well as my host, Michael Teo, Nurul Fatia, Carl, you all for tuning in to Stay Kind. Please tune in next week and the following weeks. We'll always be here every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. the time. So with that, take care, everybody, and stay kind. Bye-bye.
Yes, I'll connect with anyone who wants to on LinkedIn. Please do connect.
Please do.
Yes, I already clicked.
photo. Let us take a group photo.
Okay, group
Shafri, I'll
photo.
answer
Let us take a group photo.
And Rizal.
I think if you want to adjust the camera,
Okay,
so
let's
that
do
all
that.
5 of us. There you go. Oh, there you go. Excellent.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All
Big
right.
smile. Yeah. Merry Christmas. Yes, Azib, put that on. All right. Big smile. 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Good day,
Good evening.
everyone.
Good day,
Thanks,
wherever you are.
Jim.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,